Okay, I think I'm recording. This is my Samsung, and I think you'll see it turns things a little yellow. The problem is my other cameras, I have one in the box and one there. They're both the JVCs. They've had a problem where the screen that I can view through no longer really works. Now, I can kind of work with the old one, the one that I was just using, but it was creating this horrible image that really terrified the hell out of me. And I'm going to give this sucker a shot for at least this video, see how well it goes. I know it's going to come out a little yellow. For whatever reason, this camera has never worked well. It's supposedly the highest tech best of the cameras that I have. It's certainly the newest, but it just always irritated me. I also ended up losing my interview with Frank Chadwick because I couldn't tell whether or not I was recording because it's got a different interface for the buttons than I was used to. I thought I'd bring the nice camera that actually worked rather than the ones that had battery problems. This one I can charge right off the cord. The problem is I don't really, I didn't need that because I had this little button, little plug-in thing. Anyway, let us start the next turn. And this is beginning the spring of 16. We've got new cards in the deck, and we draw one. Just making sure I'm doing things right. By the way, just to babble a little more before I actually start, because we like to do that, right? I've had a fucked up sleeping schedule for, I don't know, since Christmas, basically. Since before Christmas. I started taking days off because of the holidays, and around that period I have to get rid of a lot of, personal days, and I don't know what happened, but I got in the habit of not sleeping. This is a regular thing for me where I kind of drift in my sleep schedule when I don't have a regular schedule. But unfortunately, after that, I settled into a regular schedule that is, I fall asleep as soon as I get home from work, or as soon as I get done with work. I don't get home, I'm always home. And sleep for a few hours. And I might sleep all the way through. I might sleep for a few hours and then wake back up. A lot of different things happen within it, but I almost invariably fall asleep sometime between like 3 or 4, which is, when I'm done working, depending on the days, and, maybe as late as 8 p.m. And then I sleep for several hours in there, whatever that is, wake up, and then usually I'm two away, now it's like 5:30, or no, 4:30, and I officially start work, well, I don't really start work then, but yeah, I kind of log in at 6, I officially kind of start at 7, but whatever, there's a flexibility to all of this, and it's not worth sleeping for an hour, even though I'm kind of tired, but I know I'm going to be fucking tired all day, and then I'm going to be exhausted. Now, tomorrow, I think I have a dentist appointment. I'm going to get a tooth ripped out, and that'll maybe put a kink in this, but I really thought I had a beat this weekend, and I was gonna be able to sleep tonight, and it just couldn't happen. Okay, anyway. Here's the goddamn Sussex Pledge. Place on the U.S. entry track, okay? There's a counter. There we go. And I don't know what I do with it other than that. If U-boats are in the Hague or Lusitania has not been sunk, it's +1. If the boats are in unrestricted and the Lusitania has been sunk, we oopsed. That's going to be +2. And we're having problems already. We're going to cause the U.S. to come in early, I can see. And that's not good. We're having enough trouble as it stands. Okay, let's see if I can figure out how to stop this so that I can take my actions for the turn. And I really have no idea what I'm doing at this point. Oh, I have a zoom marker. I have a zoom now. How about that? Oh, I think I have one on the old one too. Not the one I've been using. but the even older one. Okay, so what I wanted to say is the Germans are going to take their, they're staying out in the unrestricted with Al. They're going to take their shot at the blockade at this point. I feel like time's running out. I'm not going to get another opportunity that's good. So for the naval combat, what do? It's going to be, we roll 1 die for each fleet, each fresh fleet. So I'll roll the Germans first. So I only have 4 dice and there's 5 things, and I don't have the color setups. These dice, I don't understand the colors they give. Okay, so the Germans, they missed, and the Allies, the Brits, did 1 hit to the Germans. The Germans have to retreat, and we'll have to fix that ship. That's it. And hey, look, it was Jutland, you know. No restrictions on the Germans in this. I remember, I think in the prototype that I was playing, the Germans had more flexibility with their fleet. They didn't just get stuck in the blockade box, but there were restrictions on them like there are in both Balance of Power and Le Grand Guerre, preventing them from sorting out kind of at will. The game that really screws up. I mean, okay, Le Grand Guerre, the German Navy can win the war for them fairly easily. They have the odds in their favor against the British. The numbers of the British are great, but it's hard for the Brits to get enough navies into the battle. The Germans can defeat the weaker. They have significant advantages in any given naval battle, no matter what's going on, as long as they bring the whole fleet against the whole fleet. I've seen them wipe out like 3 waves of Allied fleets. Not so big a deal in Balance of Power. They don't really have that problem. In the Great War, the German Navy isn't particularly potent, but it can destroy England by just inflicting losses to the British Navy. And then the Brits have to spend so much to get their Navy ready to fight to sail again that, a lucky chance there. Just a single attack can just ruin the English completely and send them into total death spiral. Okay, so that was that. My attacks, I'm planning on launching an attack here. I'm low on German armies, but I did shift a damaged army over to here. I'm hoping that doesn't end up with Germany gutted because of it. I'm kind of worried the West Front's going to collapse, but this will help the Austrians in their attacks in Italy. I just feel like I'm so pressed on all sides so early in this game. Now, obviously, I'm not. I could not be engaging in this Russian attacks, but I know time's against me, and the Central Powers have to press the attack. It's just the nature of the war. They can't just hold out forever. In fact, the victory conditions essentially say that. If we get to the end here, I gotta have a lot of victory points. Didn't quite, I gotta be careful this one. The points didn't, the camera takes a little longer to start, so I start talking just as I push the button. It's not good enough. The points didn't quite work out as well as I hoped. I took 2 hits on the submarines. My rebuilds, I didn't gain any ground. I didn't get anything attrition-wise. I did some damage to the Russians. That's about it. But I didn't end up with enough points to build the entrenchment I wanted. I actually wanted to build one here as well, perhaps. But by taking 2 submarine hits, I couldn't do that, and I couldn't repair my fleet. I could just take the points I wanted. I could have given the Austrians a point so that, they've got capability to launch attacks against the Russians or whatever, instead of sending a German unit down there. But I think that might have been wiser than the German unit, to tell you the truth. But anyway, but now we draw our type card. Let's see what we get. Strasstruppen. Unfortunately, this is A3. We do not have any A's. So, well, wait a minute. We do have one. I think the Skoda Works is an A1. I'm not sure. I gotta look that up. I'll tell you one thing, this camera's more comfortable. Anyway, it is not an A1 as far as I can tell from the card. It's just an event card, and it gives an artillery without giving you the technology, which makes sense. The Germans have not improved their technology. Okay, that means we'll draw the Western Allies card and take a look at that. Pressure fuses. Draw a bonus technology card, draw 2 cards, keep 1 eligible in tech group Q. That's going to give us anti-submarine stuff. Again, I'm not sure what I'm doing, but it feels like we've been left alone in the West, which means we're going to probably be launching attacks on the West Front. That's always sort of the case. If you get left alone somewhere in World War I, that means you probably should be launching attacks. Ooh, I forgot. Let me do him. He's just going to keep doing his guerrilla warfare. And he got a hit that'll slow the Brits down a little bit. I don't understand this camera. It took me like 5 minutes to figure out how to turn it back on this time. I'm not sure why. Anyway. The Allies launched a massive attack into the Rhineland. They almost took it. The Germans lose themselves another piece. They got lucky. They're beginning to run out of their, yeah, you're not getting through here pieces. And, historically, it was that kind of failure we can't hold anymore that, caused them to surrender rather than, oh, look, it's fall 1918. Which is to say, I wish the game took that more into account, Look, the German player could surrender when it's obvious that they can't hold anymore. That's what historically happened. The army didn't actually collapse. The game, some time limit didn't run out. What happened was they were pressured too much, and the player surrendered rather than. And the negotiated peace for La Grande Guerre actually handles that the best out of anything I've seen. However, most players will not give up a situation if they can avoid it. So, wow, I'll never be able to figure out the timing on this camera either. Okay, and I don't know. So anyway, that was almost successful. Almost successful, of course, and good enough. I didn't want to do the Italians. They still got troops to build, and this just doesn't look promising. Although there is no trench there yet and no defensive fire. But I did launch an attack here in Bulgaria, which was successful in the sense that I knocked the Bulgarians down. They're not going to have a point to recover, which means the Greeks, unless somebody covers that space, like the Bulgarian army here, the Greeks will have a shot to dislodge them. And I also launched an attack that was a failure in Jerusalem. And now we take care of the economics. The build's nothing too exciting. The Brits took 2 hits on the economic warfare table, but that increased U.S. intervention. No, and otherwise they built what they could, which was not Greece and not, no, they didn't lose one in Baghdad. I didn't make that attack because I knew I couldn't build everything. Now we draw 2 cards looking for Qs. We did not get a Q, so these are just discarded. And now our normal card, which is G1, we're going to get a gas card. So these fuses did not happen for us. and I reshuffle the deck and go to the next player, which is the Eastern Allies. We're starting to see the problems with the Russians. Worker unrest. Got to get an army. Doesn't have to be full strength in Petrograd, or else I get no production whatsoever. Not sure entirely what I'm going to do. Obviously, we're going to make an attack on the Bulgarians because they didn't get a chance to recuperate, actually. That's kind of cool. I didn't realize the pulsing allowed me. So the Austria is harder to cooperate with, which kind of makes sense in certain parts of the war. But later in the war, the Austrians became much more integrated with the German plan, especially as German troops began to stiffen their lines, etc. So, yeah. I don't know if the command... the thing is, there were other problems with Austrian command control, etc. So it may just be that that whole area becomes such a mess, and actually actively doing attacks with the Austrians becomes such a difficult factor that it still makes sense to keep them separate. But here where you've got troops that actually are interacting with each other, they might be on the Russian front too, it's very nice to be able to get a double turn. It's not as good as being able to work together because like I could have taken Bulgaria then, but yeah. Okay. Oh, Bulgaria is knocked out of the war. Unfortunately, Greece could be next because an Austrian success here could knock Greece right out, which means maybe the mountain unit comes back down and attacks. I chose not to make attacks against Turkey. It didn't seem valuable. If the Brits had succeeded in knocking the Turks down a little bit, then it would make more sense. But we can't win the attrition war. Turkey gets one replacement per turn. Let them make the attacks if they want to. And then if they're damaged, well, they will be damaged. Well, no, they'll get their point back, whatever. The Russians covered Petrograd and then built up defenses, including another trench here. I don't have to worry too much about the Ukraine. It's not really a risky space. I can fall back to this line if need be. Yeah, good luck getting to the Caucasus with the Austrian army all that way. Or even Moscow for that matter, but Moscow's worth trying for. So I could conceivably defend the center of Russia, and right now I'm really worried about the Germans, so I've put enough of a blockade on the Germans that I don't think they're going to punch their way through. I think they're going to have to wait for the revolution. I really like how this is turning out as a overall story. Yes, the Central Powers are definitely doing worse than they did historically, but I feel it's believable given the mistakes that I made. You know, the things that happened. They feel like, yeah, they do generate that story. I'm not seeing anything that I'm like, oh my God, that's just fucking impossible. It does feel real. It feels like it's giving the correct narrative. It may not be much in terms of, is there much you can explore about it? Like in La Grande Guerre or Balance of Power or any of the others that go into more detail. There's a lot more you can tinker with and play with and explore, but and answer some questions. Here you can't really answer the big questions. You might be able to answer certain questions, but it's giving you a more believable basis, which is pretty damn cool, actually, comparatively. I have no idea how this, how my file joiner is going to work with this, whether it's going to operate properly. The MTS has worked fine. I don't know that whatever video format this creates will. That will drop us to the Central Allies, and we get an event card. One thing that's kind of painful, if I miss an event card, I will never know. On the first turn, I would know. There's 3 event cards for each nation, but the size of the stacks changes because cards get shuffled back in and stuff like that. Bulgarian war effort. If Bulgaria has joined the war and not been conquered, too late. Flip one spent Bulgarian army to fresh at no cost. Well, too bad. They could have survived just, you know, that one attack, but they didn't. This camera is kind of complicated because I charge it with, I have to turn it off when I charge it basically, and I have to open up a little panel on the side and the windows open and everything. It's just really weird to charge, an inconvenient situation, but it's not broken like my other two were, so I don't have to rely on the external charging device. Okay, so yeah, it's funny to try to get used to this one again. I never really fully got used to it because when it screwed up my interview, I said, fuck it, I'll figure out a way to get the one with the bad battery to work, because the bad screen I couldn't get working. It could video fine, I just couldn't see what was going on. Okay, so what happened? Yeah, I know, I'm talking about the wrong stuff here. I should be talking about the game. So, the Austrians managed to take Greece, cutting, the Greeks off here. They still exist, I think. I have to look that up to make sure that they do. They might be popped, but I think they still exist, but are basically very easy to destroy. There's nothing that can survive them. The Serbs were destroyed because they can't be rebuilt. The Brits, however, did the naval evacuation, and they're back in the pile here. They couldn't do a none shall pass type thing. And then I built up some additional forces. The Austrians, the Turks did an attack on the Brits at Baghdad, which failed. No biggie there. And that looks like that's the end of spring of 16. We got the Fokker Scourge card here. This will get us bonus cards from Tech Group P. So far, we're the only ones with plane capabilities. Now, if that were accurate, we would have them not just deployed in one place. You know, I mean, they would be more pervasive if we actually had the numerical superiority that's being indicated by the time period, the amount of time that we've been alone on producing planes. Same kind of thing goes with artillery, etc. There's a ramp up, and I don't think the cards are reflecting that very nicely. So again, you know, there's certain things in the game that aren't sort of the big picture. The big picture looks good, like I've been saying. But things like this, you start looking at them like, it gets them as wrong as the more detailed games get things wrong. It's just, well, the more detailed games tend to get the big picture wrong, and they get the details right. Here, the details end up unbelievable. But so what? Because you got the big picture right. But again, you obviously don't have a real model that you can play with. The other thing this does is it would allow us to deploy our planes without having to dogfight, so we wouldn't have a chance of failing to deploy them, but that's not an issue right now. In fact, I have no idea how that mechanism works anymore. The Germans are in a lot of, well, Central Powers in general are in a lot of trouble. I haven't looked up the Bulgaria rule, I gotta look that up. But notwithstanding what happened in the Balkans, which isn't too bad, we're not making much progress in Russia. We kind of have to hope for Russia, I think, to fall on its own at this point. I think we got to make a stab into the Somme. I think that's our only way forward, is for a quick victory before the U.S. comes in. If we get really lucky, maybe we'll be able to get to Paris itself. That's ridiculously lucky. I don't think that's even possible. Right now there are 3 of these. I can get to 5. That's 4 hits to get here, a 5th hit here. So I would have to be completely successful on, what did I say, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attacks. That's not going to happen. But if I can grab the Somme, at least I'm putting a little bit of a vice back on France, which just isn't right now. The problem with that is, hey, maybe I'm freeing up Russia, you know? I don't know. And I'm going to be leaving the Rhine open, which is just going to suck. Not completely open, but not much better than it is right now. I have no additional armies that I can deploy or anything. Okay, so the Germans launched an attack into the Somme. It was not at all effective. They took the trenches down and no further. Then they launched 2 attacks into Brest-Litovsk, and, you know, they did some damage, so the Russians are going to have trouble with a counterattack. Obviously, the Western allies are fine because their situation really did not change at all, which means the Rhine is in a lot of danger. If I had taken the Somme, which I thought I had a fair chance of doing, then the attack on the Rhine might not be the best move. The best move might be to either try to retake the Somme or defend Paris or some combination of those two. But as it is, I ended up doing sort of a half-assed job on the Russians, not getting something that maybe I could have. I'm not defending here, and nothing looks good at all. And no points to spare for Austria. I could have certainly given them a point if I so desired. Is there some reason to? I don't think so. I think they're as good as they can be. I can make attacks here anyway, and at least I charged up this unit in case I need it, which I probably will. And I forgot to do my tech draws. The first is I get these two. And this one's not going to work. Counter battery is not going to work. So I only have P1 up, so I can't play P3. And then I get my normal tech draw, which is U2. I have U1, so I can get this. Card effects listed on U-boat attack tables. One German fleet can also re-roll a single naval combat attack roll. That'll help. That's the improved fire control. Now, they get that. I don't remember if they have that right at the beginning in La Grande Guerre. Certainly, it could just show up on this in. No, it couldn't, because it's U2, and it's you'd have to get that first. I think they get it before their U-boats are up to speed or whatever, and I trust that better, but I don't know the history either way well enough. I know maybe you do have to wait a little bit for that. I think you do, because the improved fire control combined with if you can get it early enough, and I don't remember if you get it or not. I think maybe you get it to start with. The improved fire control combined with the duds that the British mal-designed shells that didn't explode. That combination allows the Germans to sort of beat the frontline British fleet. And then once that's out of the way, the other lines and the French fleet and whatever become easier to take down. Okay, so I guess Fokker Scourge is done, and it wasn't too impressive. It really had almost no effect. And that gets us to the Western Allies. Before I reshuffle, I gotta remember I got the gas. Remember to use it this time. But let's draw the event card. Inspired Leadership. We're gonna get another one of those tokens. And I got two of them, so let's bring the other one into play. So the Allied attack from Verdun is successful into the Rhine. It's counting the mountain defense this time. If I missed it before, I know there was some discussion that I may have. And I've got one more action left coming from them. I could attack into Bavaria. That would be fairly easy. Not guaranteed, but fairly easy, and would take away 2 production from the Germans. On the other hand, I could go straight for Hanover, which would be harder. I would have to do an opposed die roll there with no bonuses except for winning ties. And if I succeed, I don't know what the hell happens to the High Seas Fleet. I think it's fine. But that would get me very close to Berlin. That would cut these armies off. That would cause all kinds of problems. I don't feel like I have to take the high-risk option, though. I feel like the Western Allies are winning, and I would rather take the lower risk, which means all I have to do is roll, I think, a 2 or higher. If I roll a 2, I gotta think. Okay, and that'll allow me to go in here. I'll take some French in with me, too. And we're definitely beginning to see the fall of Germany happening here, I think. For our builds, we had some trouble with the U-boats, took 2 hits from them, and also ended up hurting ourselves a little bit down here. The Italians, oh geez, I gotta roll something with the Italians. I mean, they're not going to succeed, but they have a point to rebuild, so they might as well. No. I think I've been forgetting to build Italian units. I think that's the problem. Okay, Triple Entente gets 1 card for technology. This one's Q ships. This is Q1. This will affect the U-boat tables, and things are going to get uglier for them very shortly. That will put us to the Eastern Allies. That's going to get reshuffled back in the poison gas. And Romania joins the Entente. Romania declares war. No Russian units can move to Romania this turn during the movement phase. Okay. Right, well, the Russians launched an attack from here into Prussia. They knocked it down to where it was vulnerable, but they only had 1 piece available over here in Brest-Litovsk. Not worth bringing another sector in. So I'm just going to leave this as an attritional combat. Couldn't even rebuild all my Russians. I took a shot at Hungary. That didn't work. And that brings us now to the Central Power Allies. Austria-Hungarian fleet placed near Rome. Near Rome? What? Remove 1 PP transferred to Italy, if any. The Western Allies may not make sea moves through the Mediterranean anymore. However, during the Western Allied combat phase, they can knock this sucker out. So this actually is kind of weird. This is kind of a, you have a strategic option in most games to set sail with the Austrian fleet, and then the Brits, who actually have a fleet down here, and the French could interact with it. Well, the representation is, I guess, that the blockade would be somehow weakened by this. If you did fight that out, I'm not sure I buy it. The Brits did not commit significant forces from the home fleet area. Some were withdrawn from the Mediterranean because the Austrian-Hungarian fleet and the Turkish fleet were not that big enough of themselves. The only time that I see this being any danger in one of the games that's more detailed is if the German fleet sorties and beats the crap out of the English fleet. Which, you know, didn't happen here. But, okay, you know, that may be the indication here that the English have taken enough damage on their fleet, whatever, that they had to withdraw somewhat from the Mediterranean. That they couldn't protect their supply lines, etc. I find that hard to believe. That Austrian fleet is just not potent. It would cost something to take, but I don't think that's the cost. I would say it costs like a PP to knock it out or something, because the fleets are already down here and operable. Okay, anyway, that's a little bit of griping there, and let's see, what do we want to... And I have no idea how much video I've used here. None whatsoever. I think I've used... I don't know, maybe 43 minutes or something, but I'm not used to this camera, so it's hard to tell. So now the Eastern Central Powers get to do something, and I feel like there's nothing I can do. I can launch attacks into Bavaria and try to clear that out. That's probably the most effective thing I can do. Okay, well, the Austrians were exceptionally effective. First of all, they managed to destroy Romania, knock it out of the war. That makes these Greeks in Bulgaria still useless, mostly. There's some Romanians who withdrew. They cannot stand. And then I made the attack into Bavaria and cleared that as well with the aid of those German units, which couldn't actually participate in the fight because they're different turns, but they were able, and I forgot to reshuffle the technology deck, they were able to advance with them, and they were able to support so that the Austrians didn't get their penalty. So that's kind of cool, and that will be the end the summer of 16. Well, the existential angst has returned with a long sleep today. And I don't know what's going on, but that set me off and has made things a little bit more difficult. It might be the simple fact that I actually have to do something tomorrow. I have a dental appointment, probably to get one of my teeth ripped out of my skull. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The other thing is I found some more mold, in this case, not in the one room that I keep cold, which I should have expected. The windows there are all the old style. There's a lot of water gathered around them. It begins to make it clear what's spring cleaning is about, you know. And I've never really understood it before. It was like, yeah, you know, you can air out the house, so I guess that makes it easier. But what the hell? Yeah, if you keep the place cold and let it get kind of damp, mold shows up everywhere. Every spring you're going to have to clean that, and I'm afraid I'm going to be faced with that. Not if I can get my damn heater working, my fire. I didn't have any last year. I don't think it... Anyway, enough babbling. The Germans picked up... first of all, I'll read this. They picked up a card, choose a German-controlled area with at least one army. The first French army defeated by this might... if it has a 3 or more differential on the defeat, it's removed from the map and returned to the force pool, which is a little more intense than the usual casualties, which is just to reduce it. It's not a huge effect, but it's a slight bonus for the Germans, obviously a reference to the Verdun attacks. I'm having trouble finding something I want to do with that. It is a little bit of an incentive to attack against the Allied positions. And here is kind of the weakest defense zone. I'd like to regain the Rhineland, but I don't know if I can afford the attacks. And if I take them, what cost that reflects against with the Russians. On the other hand, I don't know that I can afford not to attack. Basically, the Central Powers position is just so hosed at this point. And it shows a little mistake or two can go a long, long way if you do them early enough. All right, well, I'll try to figure out what I'm doing with them. Okay, with the Rhineland gone, and strangely, it's only worth 1 point. That seems a little inappropriate. With so much of the coal and the industry centered there, it does strike me kind of odd to have so much of the points of their industry set elsewhere. I suspect that's more of a game balance mechanism to prevent easy falls of border areas from too heavily affecting the Germans. But we're thankful for that at this point. For the Germans, they mainly did an attritional turn. I did get that attack off successfully, to bleed the French, so one of their units not dead permanently, just they have to fully rebuild it out of the Somme. And I tried some attrition over here. Maybe went a little too far because there's a German unit I couldn't rebuild and still get. I took a loss in my submarines, and I also wanted to build some trenches. So I had a lot of expense to take underway. So nothing special going on. Let's see our tech card. Planned barrages. A2, we don't have an A. So the fact that we've never gotten the A1 card for the Germans means that we're just not getting that artillery bonus. Now, how big a deal is artillery? Well, it's a pretty big deal. Strasstrup, and they're based on it. So the Allies also don't have it, though. Unless yeah, they don't. They only got the C heavy artillery. Okay, So we're not getting any tech. I did my rebuilds. I get my planes now, right? This is when I get to move my planes now. Yeah. I think I'm most interested in defending Hanover out of everything. That's where things will go the worst if they turn in the wrong direction. Let's draw the Western Allied event card, see what that is. U.S. financing, U.S. entry marker is going to go up by 1, and we're going to get some additional French production. Okay, we just hit 8. I think that may be the U.S. entry. Oops. I think that may be the U.S. entry point. I don't think it is off the map. Yeah, once it reaches 8, it declares war. So I'm going to have to be throwing those U.S. pieces on the board at this point, too. All right, so that card's gone. And what do we have? Remember, the U.S. comes in during the Russian turn. They actually get to do things, but they exist already, which gave some addition here. So the British ended up shooting down the Austrian fleet. That's going to allow them to ship this money to the Italians. Did some recovery, did an attack over here, but I had to recover from that. That didn't work well. I didn't choose to attack with the Italians. This is kind of weak, but I don't have a lot of Italians, and I can build up a bigger army to launch an attack that might actually have an effect on Austria. Right now, chances are I wouldn't gain anything, especially with the none shall pass, where the Austrians would probably be able to hold the space. I was more interested in attritional attacks on the Germans with an attempt to take Hanover, but the German air superiority, along with the extra troops I built and everything, slowed that down quite a bit. However, some buildup of forces. I don't have additional trenches. I got these 2 trenches stuck in Paris that I can't use, so I can't build up my trenches here. I can't build up any additional defenses, as I advance into Germany, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like I don't agree with the reality behind it, whatever argument you can make for it, but it does serve as something of a little catch-up mechanism. It makes it a little harder to take somebody down at the end of the game. I don't think that's particularly an appealing factor, but some people might. I did not. The subs were useless, and I did not spend on that. I chose to give money to Italy instead, and I get another anti-submarine warfare card. So, those subs are not going to do much at this point. Germany's kind of on their last legs in terms of being able to finish things off. And this is going to end real quick if that's the case, I think. It just doesn't look like I can hold very long. That puts us to the Eastern Allies, and they get their event. And their event is U.S. isolationists. If Lusitania is sunk and Atlanticists already drawn, this is not the Winter 16 turn, so it doesn't affect the... this affects the pre-election situation, I guess. The U.S. entry track, I don't think it makes a damn bit of difference at this point. So this would have been a useful card a little bit earlier, but the U.S. is in the war. They're not gonna withdraw from it at this point. And we'll see what the Russians do. The U.S. is just going to be rebuilding, I believe, 1 unit per turn. A little bit mistaken. The Allied forces, the U.S. forces, don't show up until at this point, and they don't start rebuilding until the next turn. The Russians did some attacks on Poland. This was probably a mistake. They should have been going after East Prussia, but they didn't manage to take it, so it's okay. They pulled some of the forces out of the Ukraine in order to better launch that attack. I'm planning on going into Prussia next time, but notably nothing against the Turks. No interest in that. The Ukraine is so unimportant in terms of it would take the Austrians so long to make it through there that I'm willing to only very lightly defend it, but not so lightly that I leave it ready to retreat. I did increase the unit there just for the sake of whatever. And that brings us to the end of the turn. Player at the Central Allies, Mustafa Kemal, place on a Turkish army. He'll give a +1 for defense. I don't know which army I want to put him on. Doesn't look like Gallipoli is going to happen. The Central Powers has so much strength down in the Balkans, I don't see much value to it. So it's really a question of where do I want the defenses? Do I want them here at Erzurum or at Jerusalem? I'll probably put it with whichever army I am less likely to be attacking with. But I don't know which one that is. I don't know if I want to pick on the English or with the Turks, or I want to pick on the Russians, who are a little harder to attack. Both have possibilities of some production points to take away from them. And we finish things off with the Austrians trying to launch an attack into here. The Russians actually expend their artillery on defense in this case. Even just against the Austrians, I couldn't really afford that. Now this means I'm not going to have the artillery support that I want, but I feel like I've got enough balance. I just didn't want to lose that space. We also launched an attack in this direction, which didn't do anything either. And the Turks successfully attacked in the Sinai. So that ends us this turn. And we go into another one. Germans did attritional attacks all over the place. Moved submarines to unrestricted. They actually attacked the fleet because, hey, it's weak now, with the Brits having reduced themselves a little bit. That was to absolutely no effect. It was just a sortie with nothing. And let's see. We were able to rebuild everything, get an additional trench here. You can see we pulled out of Belgium. We're just attacking the Rhineland. I think I forgot about the mountains in the Rhineland. Oh well. And I spent a point to the Austrians to let them attack without penalty on this next turn. That feels good. Now my card for the turn, I forgot to mention this, is one that just gives me some bonus tech. So let's get that bonus tech. And I'm allowed to keep from any tech group. So, the Strasstruppen, obviously I cannot play yet. However, I can play the heavy artillery. So I get 2 heavy artillery in any area containing at least 1 army. And the Central Allies get 1 in any area containing at least 1 land supply to Austria and Hungary. That's cool. Kind of running out of cards here. This one can go away because running out of space for the cards. I want to get the heavy artillery here to remind me of that, and I'll get those on the board. But in addition to that, I also get my normal one, and we didn't see that. I'll reshuffle. We get counter battery, which is another heavy artillery in any area containing a land supply German army. The Central Allies would get another one, but they can't have another one. That Scopa works or whatever, that gave them their second artillery. So they're not going to get that here, but we're going to have defensive artillery fire as an option too. Now, defensive artillery fire is kind of weird because it means you forego using it offensively. Well, no. You have to forego using it offensively to have it available defensively. Which way does it go? No, if you use the defensive fire, you won't get to fire offensively in your turn with that unit because it's flipped over and you don't get it back until your production. So yeah, we got a lot of our artillery back at least here. The Western Allies event card was a phosgene gas use. That'll allow them to pull the phosgene gas out. They're not going to be able. They just got to use it. They don't get the bonus effects of the phosgene. But they used it to somewhat good effect. It helped them take Belgium back. And attacks all over the place, right? No real effect with the other attacks. The Italians still building up. And the U-boats did a good job and the Brits were unable to build as much as they wanted to. I'm out of trenches, so I can't defend Belgium nor this any heavier. I've got all these trench lines, back where they're not going to have any effect probably again on the game, and I can't touch them. And then we get our tech, which is heavy artillery A1, which strangely we haven't gotten yet. Western Allies get 2 heavy artillery, and the Eastern Ally US get 1 in an area with Russians. So that'll help a little bit. I draw the Allied card. I wanted to point out, there's these map issues. Normally maps are not drawn so that things come to 4 corners like this, and then you're not allowed to transit those corners. This map is drawn that way, and it creates for some interesting situations. And I'm not sure how I feel about this. But for example, Belgium and the Rhine, they aren't next to each other. Now, does that matter? In a way, it would in a normal area control game because you can only move adjacent, etc. But here, because you can slip around behind the lines with the strategic movement, the only actual movement, all it means is you can't launch an attack from one to the other. And so what it does is it creates a more limited set of spaces that you can attack a given space from, even though you might geographically appear to be capable of maybe being able to stream into there or something. What is the reality of that? Well, it means you can't cross from here to here, which I feel perfectly fine with, but you also can't cross from there to there. It just creates a greater limitation to where you can position your axis of attack. And I think, overall, it creates a more historical functionality for the map, the way the map actually works, than regular adjacency would. But it creates the kind of confusions that I see in a point-to-point map, where you're like, well, I'm next to this. It looks like I'm close. Why can't I attack? And it does create some issues there. It's not as bad as a point-to-point in terms of the representational issues for me. But it has the same, I think, net effects. The only thing is you can't create you can create some weird graphs with a point-to-point map. Things that don't represent a real map. Okay. Scorched Earth. Place on this card. Russian armies may now legally retreat all armies in an area in lieu of making a unit spent after a combat loss. Ooh. The attacker is spent and advances into the area which the Russians just advanced without making a garrison die roll. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I don't know why there's a token for this. This is, I don't think, a one-time thing. It looks like it's just an effective tactic that they have. Now, it's not absolutely clear. I could go look it up in the errata. My feeling is that the intention for this is the Russian fallback, their great retreat that they performed that left the Germans kind of a little bit of a weird situation where they had to grab the territory, but it wasn't quite the Napoleonic situation by any means, but it was a strange thing. Okay, and I gotta figure out what the hell to do with those Ruskies. That extra artillery, that affected both sides, so I'm not sure whether either side got an actual advantage out of it. The Russian offensive was incredibly ineffectual. They put a lot of pieces into play and failed to do too much to the Germans. Germans held. And this is after rebuilding. Now, what I haven't done yet is the rebuilding for the U.S. What happens is one piece grows. That's it. They can't send money until they can send pieces across the sea. They can't send pieces across the sea until they fully mobilize. They're totally unwilling to send forces in piecemeal. Boy, were the French begging for actual troops to show it. I don't know so much about the not sending money before you can send troops in, nor do I understand there's some other issues with this. So when eligible to transfer PP to other nations, they have 9 PP during 1917. I don't know. I don't know if it's impossible for them to come in before 17 where they can send money, but they certainly can't right now. No U.S. movement or PP transfers are permitted during these mobilization turns once all 3 units are fresh at the start of their movement phase. 1 U.S. unit can C-move. And that's when I'll start being able to send stuff. And I'll have tons and tons of money available as soon as that all mobilizes, but it's not there yet. I think it would be very hard. You might be able to, let's see, if that card was drawn in spring of 16, summer of 16 would be the turn that it comes into play, that they come on the board, right? No, they're built here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they wouldn't be able to lend until 17 anyway. So that's probably the limit, is based on when the card comes in. Let's draw the Central Allies card. This is the end of the year. Arab Revolt. Place in Anatolia. Place what in Anatolia? Once per turn, a Western Army allied in the Near East may roll 1 extra die on the first attack. Well, that's not good. Let's see if I can find it. Oh. I know I saw that. Ah, there it is. All right. And see what, if anything, I can do with the Austrians. Remember, they're funded this turn, so I probably do want to launch an attack somewhere. That ends 1916. The Austrians, what did they do? They actually launched attrition attacks, both against the Russians and the Italians. They didn't get to rebuild everything. They shifted their unit out of Greece, flipped it up to the Italian border, hopes of, breaking through. But I didn't go all out with them. I'm just kind of like, well, let's see if we can do damage. We didn't really succeed in doing much. Let me roll one more. Yeah. And I rebuild the decks, and I load this sucker up.